Manchester United are the champions of Europe again.
Hello and welcome back to the One United podcast. Second in 2 days, who'd have thought? I'm joined as ever by Henry. Henry, how you doing?
Good, you?
Yeah, not bad. And it's been a while, but we're happy to welcome back the other Henry. Well, Henry for today. The other Henry is Henners. So, how are you doing, mate?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks, mate. Obviously, still a little bit down about last night, but what can you do? Got to move on.
Well, yeah, you've brought us nicely into what we wanted to talk about today. Obviously, probably the most embarrassing loss of the season, and that goes a long way when we've already lost 6-1 this season. So, you know, says a lot. But we did manage to lose to Sheffield United, just their second victory of the Premier League season. I'll come straight to you, Henners. How are you feeling straight after the game?
Disappointed, and that's not because of the result. You know, I know people will be upset at the fact that we lost, but you can lose games in seasons, that happens. But it's the manner in which we lost, the lack of fight, the lack of willingness to run. I saw a team yesterday that it looked like it had been on a 6-game losing streak, looked bereft of confidence. Looked like they couldn't be asked, to be honest. A lot of the players, the front three were, I mean, the only one that was decent was Greenwood. The other two were shameful. Rashford and Martial were absolutely awful. And people will talk about Martial's performance, but I think we need to discuss Rashford recently because he has been absolutely awful recently. And that's not because I know he's getting goals and assists at times, and, you know, in the Burnley game, popped up with an assist and whatever, but he gets off scot-free because, you know, he's Marcus Rashford. But he has had an absolute stinker yesterday. Lack of running, which I never expect from him. And, you know, sometimes these players just need dropping. And I know Ole Gunnar Solskjaer won't have the bollocks to do that against Arsenal with Rashford. He'll drop Martial, but he won't drop Rashford. But that sets, to me, a dangerous precedent for the rest of the team because they think they can get away with anything. So, yeah, I'm disappointed in the manner in which we lost. The results happen at times. We saw Liverpool; they lost to Burnley, but they were showing fight throughout the whole game. I never saw one of their players not run to make a tackle or anything. So, yeah, not particularly happy, but results like that can happen.
Yeah, it was disappointing to say the least. I'll come to you, other Henry. How are you feeling about the game?
Yeah, just disappointed, really. I think what Henry said there sort of hit the nail on the head in that it wasn't the fact that we lost, which, I mean, losing even on the face of it to a club that's, you know, I think statistics show at certain points they've been the worst Premier League team ever. Losing to a team like that, a team that's been sort of devoid of ideas, lack of goals, conceding loads, and rock bottom of the table is bad on the face of it. But it's the fact that, yeah, the way we performed was terrible. I mean, most games where Manchester United go 1-0 down and then we score, especially off a set piece and with a header or something, I think you get more of like something about you usually get more of a feeling that you're going to go on to win the game. But I felt like last night that wasn't really there. I felt like as soon as we equalised, we thought we might go and get a point now. And obviously, we went and conceded again, which is, you know, magnificently poor to do so. But yeah, I don't know. I think Henry's hit the nail on the head really with, you know, the attackers as well. I think, you know, Martial and Rashford should both get blamed. I think Martial's been the one that's took more blame, you know, perhaps because this season he has been worse than Rashford. I think that's quite fair to say that in general Martial has had the worst season. But, you know, last night they were both very poor, and Rashford, I think, massively missed Luke Shaw. I didn't think Alex Telles himself had a massively poor game, but I think, you know, you could see that Rashford was missing Shaw on that left and having someone to sort of overlap and work with. I think when Shaw came on, we looked a bit better going forward. But yeah, I think Rashford did get put out on the right in the end as well, where I think he's always struggled. I don't know. I thought Greenwood was, as you say, he was probably the best out of the three, but he still didn't have a fantastic game. I thought he largely wasn't really involved enough. He got one chance and he missed it, and that was all he sort of got. And then Cavani came on and obviously couldn't have the impact that we've seen him have due to the sort of the lack of service. I mean, I think the attackers should actually get more of the blame, and people might say that's perhaps unfair considering we've conceded 2 to bottom of the league side. But I think we were so devoid of ideas going forward that it never looked like we were going to win that game. in any sense, because of the lack of goals. But yeah, massively disappointing. I guess we've just got to try and move on now, but it's going to be hard to after such a sort of demoralising result like that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'll come to a question here. I assume it's aimed at you, Hannes, about dropping both Martial and Rashford. Who do you then play? Do you revert to Dan James, or do you play a diamond with Cavani and Greenwood up front, or how do you think we approach the game? Because I'm assuming he's not going to drop them for Arsenal, but going forward, if he were to drop them,
we do what we've done previously, and you put Pogba on the left, Fernandes through the middle, and Greenwood on the right, and Cavani up top. Because Rashford on the right is a waste. He's a waste, and he looks even more childish on the right hand side. He looks like he can't be asked even more because he's out of position. So I'd drop them both. I just would, even against Arsenal. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has got to set the tone for the rest of the squad that you can't get away with shocking performances week in, week out, and that's what Rashford's been doing. I'm sorry, I know I pick on him a lot. It's because no one else does. It's because he gets away with stuff because he's this really nice bloke who's got an MBE. I'm sorry, that's the reality of the situation. For me, he's paid to play football. That is his first job. He's paid to do that, and at the moment, he's not performing. He's not doing it for me. He looked yesterday. I know people will mention the goal where Martial lost the ball and was jogging back, but Rashford did the same thing 2 or 3 times again as well. So the frustration doesn't stem from, just the odd poor performance. It's been consistent for the last 3 or 4 weeks. So I'd start Pogba on the left, and he seems to do well on the left, actually, to be fair, because he's got more freedom to roam, and he's got, we've got an outball then as well that we can knock it up to rather than getting ripped apart because we play out from the back, which we always seem to do, which is a stupid idea. So yeah, I'd suggest doing that, and then play McTominay and Fred in the middle. I know that's a bit more defensively minded, but when we counter attack with those two, it seems to work. So yeah, I'd say drop both of them because they've put in an absolute shocker of a performance yesterday, and if they get away with it, then they'll get away with everything. So.
Yeah, well, we've got a couple of interesting comments to come to. I'll come to this one first. It's from Relegation Battle. I'm assuming it's Joel behind the account, so thanks for joining us, Joel. Can Pogba attack the space that Bellerin will leave him behind in the same way that Rashford can? I think it's a good point to make because we are going to have to play counter-attacking football at the Emirates, I think. I don't think Arsenal are going to sit in a low block. I think we are going to have to revert back to our Big Six game plan, if you will. So I'll come to you first, Henry. Do you think that Pogba would work on the left against Arsenal, or do you think we need to stick with the pace that we have?
No, I think Pogba would work. I think this is an argument a lot of people actually had against Liverpool as well. Everyone was saying put Rashford 1-on-1 with Trent, put Rashford 1-on-1 with Trent. I think Pogba did exceptionally well when he I think he played on the left in that game. I think I'm right to say that, and he was, or at least he was playing in that sort of left shadow anyway. And he did magnificently well against Trent because I think people really underrate sort of Pogba's ability to drive past players, to beat players. And I understand the point because obviously, Rashford's pace is magnificent, and we saw against Liverpool last week what Rashford can do as well, and he was magnificent. So we'll see what he goes against Arsenal. But I think Pogba would be more than capable of playing that on that left hand side and sort of attacking Bellerin. And he offers something a bit different, comes inside and drags fullbacks inside as well. So I think he's a different sort of winger option in that sense. But to answer the question simply, yeah, I think he would be able to do that job quite well.
So trying to unmute myself there. Yeah, I mean that's fair enough. But we'll switch to Martial because we did have an interesting comment come in from Jamie saying Martial doesn't look happy here. If he was sold, I wouldn't be too bothered. Now, Hennes, what do you make of that? Because there's a lot being said about Martial at the minute, and we know he's got the talent. But if he was sold, we'll say first, would you be that bothered? And if you would, who would need to come in to replace him, do you think?
At the moment, I'm not too bothered if he goes, really. I'm just not. There's something fundamentally wrong with that guy. It's an attitude thing. He's got competition in the 9 position now, and he just can't take it. So if you're struggling because you've got competition at Manchester United, you've got a big problem. Simple as that. Because that's what happens. You've got 2 players in each position. That's how it should be as a United side. So yeah, if he can't stomach it, then maybe it's not the right club for him. You know, if he wants to go, then so be it. I know we mentioned before the show about Greenwood and Cavani potentially taking a place next year. While I think that's a good idea, we've still got to fill 2 or 3 spaces in that team. Centre half yesterday proved to me it's a massive position that we've got to fill, because there's something, you know, Bailly can get injured within a second. Lindelof is struggling at the moment. He might have an operation in the summer. But you need usually 4 centre halves that are good quality that can rotate if they have to. But you need 2 world-class centre halves to take control. So that's a priority position for United, and it should be. And obviously, you know, a right winger, provided we don't see Diallo come in and put in world-class performances, we'll go out and buy a right winger, I think. So we can have this wish list all we want of players that we want to bring in and think are fantastic. And, you know, I've seen people putting up like wish list of 5 world-class players. Sorry, guys, that's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. We're in the middle of a pandemic. We've got next to no finances. The owners' best interests regard their financial best interests. So their bank accounts are more important than what we're buying in the transfer market. So we're not going to go and spend 150 million. If you think that, then I just think you've got to have a reality check, because we didn't last summer, and I don't think we're going to go and fork out that money on 3 players that are world class. It's not going to happen. So I don't know. We might have to persevere, but at the moment, I'm fed up of Martial, and maybe not even drop to the bench. Maybe just leave him at home for a few weeks, because honestly, he just looks even when he comes on, when he's not starting, he looks like he can't be arsed. So he needs a kick up the arse and someone to tell him that it's not okay to do that.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Well, I'll come to you, Henry. Now, I saw a comment yesterday that said that Martial makes Berbatov look like Ji-Sung Park. Now, does he frustrate you in that same way? And if he does, what do you think needs to be done about him? Do we ship him on and get a replacement, sort of thing?
Well, first of all, I think he does frustrate me. I think he frustrates basically the entire United fan base. I think, you know, no one can sit there and watch like the sort of the way he carries himself, and it sounds like a personal attack in that sense, but it's just sort of the look of laziness. It looks lazy. It's just blatantly it is blatantly lazy in a way. You know, he's not moving enough off the ball. You know, even when he's on it, he's not running at pace like he used to. Sort of running at players, not like, well, you know, that's the difference between him and Rashford, I think, and perhaps why Rashford probably gets less stick. You know, obviously, I think it always comes back to the youth product thing. I think there's always that bit of affection towards sort of Manchester homegrown talent. But Rashford does, I mean, last night he did, and most of the time he is getting around a bit, running around when he's on the ball. He tries to run at players and shows a bit of ambition. That's something that Martial obviously lacks. And you could argue that's because he's become more of a sort of a link-up number 9, which is an interesting argument. I don't really know what his role is as a striker anymore when he does play down the middle. I think the comparisons to Firmino are a bit strange, really. I don't know really what he is anymore. Whether we should go and sign a new striker, I always thought and really wanted us to sign Erling Haaland before we went to Dortmund, which obviously in the end was perhaps, you know, something that we did try and do, and we got turned down, which is obviously massively unfortunate. I'd like to think we put all our hope, all our efforts into getting that signing in. I'm not 100% sure. You can never know with sort of Woodward and the Glazers whether what they're doing with transfers really. But if Haaland is even possible to get near, I'd throw everything we could at him. I think, you know, he's more. I don't want to say more important than, because obviously we do need a right winger desperately. But I'd rather have Haaland than Jadon Sancho personally, which I think is a bit of a hot take. But there you go. But yeah, I'd say obviously we do need a starting number 9. Edinson Cavani's 33, and he's not going to be here forever. Obviously, contract ends this year. Will probably get extended until next year, and then we haven't got another striker apart from Martial at the club. Who would we sell him to? I'm not sure. I don't know where you'd move Martial on to. It's something that we'd have to see in the summer. I don't know whether Solskjaer will sell him. I think, you know, last season he was really good, Martial, as we know how many goals he scored. But we'll have to see what happens. I think, you know, if you can get near a sort of world class number 9 like Haaland, I'd definitely go for that.
Yeah, well, I'll bring up a comment. We'll just shift the centre of the conversation a little bit. John makes a good point in that is it possible you're overreacting a bit? You've never been favourites for the title, stumbled into that position on form, guaranteed top 4. Now, we know John's a Chelsea fan, so that's to say he's guaranteed top 4. That's a pretty big statement for us. But yeah, I think it is possible because, the way we've been playing, we've been beating smaller teams, but we've been getting very ugly wins. We've not been playing well, have we, as such? So I think a shock was on the cards eventually, the way we were playing. And I think we all did get caught up in this notion that, 21 in 21. But did either of you really, really believe we were going to win the title? Because, City just looked so good all of a sudden again, don't they? Even without Kevin De Bruyne. So I'll come to you first, Henners. Do you think we sort of just got a little bit too carried away and this result was coming?
I never got carried away, ever. And you know that from what I've said previously. I never got carried away because, believe it or not, I'm a realist, not an optimist. I look at things the way that they are, and this result has been waiting to happen for a couple of months now. We scraped a win against Burnley, and we looked okay, fighting for the game, which was fantastic. The Liverpool game, they kind of started a slightly weakened team, as did we, but then, went for it at the end and it was all good fun. But this has been waiting to happen. We're not in the title race and we never have been. And people saying, 21 in 21, way, going to be great. It's just not going to happen because City are too strong. I'm still not sure we'll finish above Liverpool, to be honest, with the way that I know they've got defensive issues, but once they get one of Gomez or probably Van Dijk won't come back this year, but maybe Gomez back this year, then they'll be back in a stronger position. So I'd say, third was a realistic way to look at things this year because we've strengthened in certain areas. And but yeah, the title was never going to happen. We're just not, that yesterday was not a title winning side. The Guardiola would not have allowed that to happen with his City sides. I know they drew against West Brom, but there was never any issue with a lack of fight or anything. So he's still got 2 or 3 players that he'll have in mind, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, that he'll want to get rid of. And, Leicester I think they'll fall away though, personally. I don't think they've got a strong enough squad. They're missing Vardy for a few weeks now. They drew yesterday, which they should have won the game. So they'll drop points. I have no doubt about that. And yeah, City will just run away with it because they're too strong in terms of their squad depth and everything. And tactically, Gundogan looks like prime Xavi at the moment. So there's no stopping him at the moment. So yeah, we're never in a title race.
Yeah, well, I'll come to you then, Henry. Obviously, I know I let myself believe for a little bit that we were going to go on and win the title this year. But do you think this is obviously a crash back down to reality, but do you think this affects our objectives for the league? And more importantly, do you think it affects our objectives now for the cup competitions? The title all of a sudden seems off the cards again. Do you think we now push harder for the FA Cup and the Europa League?
I mean, I don't think it's over. I mean, we can sit here and I think, at the beginning of the season, we all would have said the titles, there's absolutely no chance to that. I mean, the goal was always, as sort of Henry's alluded to, was, or at least for me, it was to bridge the gap to Liverpool and City. The gap was far too big last year. I mean, especially to Liverpool, it was embarrassing. And we didn't want to see that again this year. And, I'd be very surprised if a big gap like that starts to open up again. I mean, it's possible. It all depends on the reaction, really. And I think that's basically answered your question, really, with regards to our objectives. Whether or not we go and win trophies now, and continue to challenge for this title, because I don't think it's over. We'll have to see. It's all about the reaction. Especially, I think Arsenal's a massive game for us. I think these players, we could all talk about reality checks, but it's a cliche, but it is true in a sense, because a game like that, you have to see in the next game a reaction. And obviously, the way we lost and the lack of fight that we've already mentioned, that has to change. We need to see a difference against Arsenal. I've got faith that we could see a difference because, throughout the season, it's never really been a problem, this lack of fight, I don't think. The only game perhaps where I thought, was a bit of a disgrace in that sense, well, there's a couple to be fair, but they were quite a while ago now, was the Spurs game. I thought that was extremely poor with regards to fight. and maybe Istanbul away, and perhaps, but even Leipzig, away. Well, we started terribly and still got a couple of goals back. Obviously, terrible result that night, but it's been a while since we've seen that. So I've got faith in these players. In the previous weeks, we've seen some brilliant results. Obviously, we've all been caught up in this hype. But yeah, it's far from over. I think we've got to see a reaction. With regards to objectives now, I still think we should be trying to stay as close to the top as we can. And obviously, we all want to get silverware as well. So it all depends on the reaction. Hopefully, it doesn't sort of affect the players as heavily as it sort of affected the fan base's thinking.
Yeah, well, listen, I know Hennes has got a few things he wants to go through for both the goals that we've got pictures for. So I'll bring those up just to sort of bring us to an end. Hang on a minute. There we go. So I know this is an image you wanted to look through, Henry. So, just talk us through this.
Well, this is, I think people are overlooking the positioning on this corner from, I'd say, 5 of our players minimum. So we talk about the goal where Billy Sharp was, he kind of charged into De Gea. I think it should have been a foul personally, and I think a lot of other people would agree with that. It wasn't, it wasn't natural movement or anything. He just simply charged into him. Here's my biggest issue with this: a lack of nous, a lack of, I don't know. It's not professionalism. It's we're not nasty enough. So Kieran Bryant there, look at him right next to De Gea on his own. He's got probably 3 yards of space. Alex Telles, I know we say he had an okay game, whatever. I think personally he had a shocking game. Positionally for both goals, all over the place. You see him just there, kind of, he's almost marking Rashford for some reason. We've got 4 players there marking 1 at the front post. So why on earth is De Gea exposed to a wing back, or Kim Bryan can play centre half or whatever? Why is De Gea exposed? So you got Matic behind him, who's marking a player. Pogba. This really annoys me about Pogba as well, because sometimes he seems to switch off. If someone gets a flick to the back post, there is no way in hell he's going to be able to turn and get the ball or turn and block the shot. He needs to be side on there. That's just not good enough for me. That positioning is horrendous. Telles needs to be back on the keeper, pushing Kieran Bryant out, because, again, that shows a lack of being nasty. De Gea as well, he doesn't command his area. He kind of just stands there and lets things happen to him. So that missed punch or whatever, that was a lack of him talking to his defenders and telling them, if I'm a keeper there, I have someone in front of me. I have someone pushing him out the way to make sure that there's no way in hell he gets anywhere near me, but he's exposed one-on-one with a defender. So he needs to be yelling at his back line. He's got 5 players there. 5 players. He needs to be yelling at one of them to get back in, get goal side, and push Kieran Bryant away. Don't let him anywhere near me. Because the problem we've got with this is this has happened consistently. But this isn't from, us just letting the ball in the box and not heading it away. This is positionally. It's awful. And this has happened 3 or 4 times this year. And Arsenal, yeah, they do crowd the box. And I can guarantee you they won't have just 1 player on De Gea. They'll have 2 or 3, because they'll look to bully him. Because at the moment, he's showing that he can be pushed around. And that, for me, is just simply not good enough. Maguire, you got the captain, okay? A centre-half marking the front post. That's not a centre-half's job. Centre-half it should be in the middle of the 6-yard box, where Kieran Bryant is, pushing him away. Alex Telles should be on the near post. You got Rashford there as well, should be on the near post. Bruno, why have we got 4 players looking to head the same ball away in the same position? Bruno can do the job that Rashford and Martial are looking to do in that position if he just dropped half a yard deeper. So this is, we talk about, the goal should have been disallowed by VAR or whatever, this or that. The reality is the positional play in that set piece was absolutely horrific. We don't score from set pieces, and we seemingly concede from them every week. I know Maguire got a goal from one yesterday, but that was completely out of the ordinary. It never happens. So that, for me, I'm not going to say it was worse than the second goal because it wasn't. The second goal was a lot worse. But this, people need to understand that in terms of positioning, I used to be a goalkeeper. If I'm in that situation where I'm one-on-one with a defender, I know I've got problems. There's something fundamentally wrong with those defenders if they can't get Kean Bryan out of that position. He should be as far out as McGoldrick is just from being pushed away by someone. And I'm screaming at my defenders to get goal side, get 1 or 2 players on him to push him out. You don't let that happen as a keeper. So De Gea's obviously, whether he's silent or mute or whatever, but he's not talking to his defenders there because there is no way in hell they are in that position with him yelling at them. It doesn't happen. So we just seem to be lacking communication, a bit of nous. Billy Sharp, he knew exactly what he was doing there. He did that on purpose with his shoulder. He just ran into him and thought, you know what, if he drops the ball, it's a 50-50 chance I'm going to get the goal. Or someone else will get the chance and get the goal. And that's exactly what happened. So we need to be smarter.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it's easy to say in hindsight that the goal probably shouldn't stand, but I'll come to you, Henry. Do you still think that De Gea should have done better? You know, he's struggled. He's failed to get to the ball with his fist that someone's got to with their head. It shouldn't happen, should it?
Perhaps, but I think, you know, obviously you can't blame it solely on VAR that's gone in, and you know Henry's done a good job there of analysing. You know, I think mostly the actual defensive positions of the players there is obviously not good enough, and that's got, I say nothing to do with De Gea. Obviously, he's got a responsibility as a goalkeeper to order his defence, especially offset pieces. He does have an ability to be able to sort of move them around a bit, but you know. He's gone to, when you jump up in the air and you get a nudge, I mean, it completely, you know, it's physics, isn't it? It completely bugs up the way you jump and you end up sort of, you know, it completely bugs you up in that you can't move straight because you get moved off to a skewed angle. And that obviously affected him in that sense. Perhaps he could do better, as you say, you know, he could do better at actually initially just pushing people out and stopping himself from getting shoved. But, you know, I think the facts are the goal probably shouldn't have stood. And as Henry said, you know, the defenders have got to do better. And I think whenever you concede off set pieces, it always frustrates me. I think, you know, it's the one situation you can actually prepare for in a football match, the one actual sort of situation where you can pinpoint and analyse footage. They'll have been analysing footage of Sheffield United all week, how they set up and set pieces, etc. You can prepare exactly for corners and free kicks, and to concede off them is just so frustrating, especially against a club like Sheffield United, who you know at the bottom of the league are going to require set pieces and are going to rely on them as well. So it was massively frustrating in that sense. Should De Gea do better? Perhaps, but I think, you know, fundamentally he was fouled and the setup defensively off the set piece was poor from the beginning.
James, can you just bring that image up again a sec? Because I have there's one little gripe I have with this, and that is, and it's, I don't know what it is. Matic is marking Billy Sharp there, right? So he's supposedly supposed to have a hold of him. We see defenders holding all the time and it doesn't get given as a penalty. How on earth has Matic allowed Billy Sharp, from being goal side, by the way, how has he allowed him to get free and charge into De Gea? How on earth has Maguire, look at him there. He's holding from the right-hand side. He's not goal side. If he's in that position next to Kean Bryan, he gets that ball away. There are so many problems with this, and you know it's not down to the players. The setup will have been talked about by Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and his analysis team throughout
I think my connection's dropped out.
No, it's not you, mate.
Oh, is it Emery?
I think it's Henry.
Well, we'll move on to the second goal while he reconnects, I think, just because it needs talking about. We've got a comment that brings us nicely onto it. It was a shambles from the whole team, wasn't it, Emery? You know, the space he had.
Yeah.
The lack of tracking from Martial is also worth noting. And I think, you know, for a Premier League, for a team that wants to go for the Premier League title, you know, this image should not exist, should it?
No, it's terrible. I mean, there's gaps everywhere, and as you've said, as John said, the space is just ridiculous. I mean, there's so much you could pick out there. I mean, Maguire and Tuanzebe are so narrow to each other as centre halves. Tuanzebe's got to move a bit there to sort of out to the left. Tellez is caught out. I mean, there's so much you could pick out. Martial. I mean, if you sort of played that as a clip, you can see the lack of movement and desire for Martial. I mean, I don't think he moves from that spot. You see him in the photo there as this goes on. Tuanzebe gets unlucky. To be fair to him, it hits him and getting deflecting. Whether De Gea would have saved it had it not been deflected, I think he might have been a bit more comfortable. But it's a mess in all senses. This space should never have opened up, and I think it's that gap between, obviously, as you see there, between Tuanzebe and Tellez where the problems have massively been caused. But yeah, it all stems from lack of tracking back from other players as well. And I think Martial's the biggest sort of example of that. So yeah, it was a really poor goal to concede. We've already talked about the first one. I mean, the second one to concede in this sort of time as well, in the set, as you see there, the sort of 74th minute against the bottom of the league when it's 1-1. I mean, you think United, when they equalise against a bottom of the league side, you think they'd go on to win the game, and obviously we haven't done so, and we've conceded in this way as well, which was massively disappointing. I think the blame can go down to a lot of players here. Martial's lack of tracking back is poor. The defence is all over the shop. But yeah, it's scandalous, really.
Hennes, I brought this image up for you because I know you want to talk about it. So, do your worst.
I do apologise, by the way. Sky Wi-Fi is utter shit. So this, oh my God. Yeah, this is giving me PTSD just looking at it. There's, again, I can't understand how. Right, okay, I'm going to analyse this the best way I can. So, Axel, Tuanzebe and Maguire, okay, this is the first problem I have with positioning. You could throw a blanket over those three in terms of Wan-Bissaka, Maguire and Tuanzebe. They should not be there. Tuanzebe should be further out. He should be pulling towards Tellez. How on earth he's not central in the box, I'll never know. Maguire should be, I saw a funny clip a couple of weeks ago of, I think it was someone pushing another defender to make a tackle into, one side of the pitch. Maguire should be shoving Tuanzebe towards that ball or shouting at him or saying, how on earth Burke got that much space in the box, I'll never know. So obviously we've seen Martial get bypassed for the goal. He made mistakes, 2 or 3 mistakes, didn't close, didn't press. Cavani and Fernandes are making more effort to get the ball there than Anthony Martial is, and he's probably just as close as Fernandes to the ball. So
let's not forget he was the one that was dispossessed as well. So there's no desire to win that ball back.
Yeah, that's pure laziness. And for me, after that, forget it. Get rid of him or put him in the reserves or whatever. I don't care. Just not good enough. You're playing for Manchester United. You're not playing for a Sunday League team. That's not good enough. So obviously I have an issue with him, but this is where I've highlighted Tellez before in terms of positioning. If you watch the clip back, you'll see he runs out with his hands behind his back and kind of half hangs a leg at pressing the ball. If that's Luke Shaw, he runs and throws himself, whether it's head first or leg first or nuts first at that ball. There is no way in hell that ball goes in the net with Bailly and Luke Shaw defending there. So these two have just come into the side. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer must have said to him, "Prove a point, guys. You've got a chance to prove a point and prove that you're good enough to be in this Manchester United side." And both of them were poor yesterday. Tellez, I'd say more so than Tuanzebe because he can cross, but I don't think he's defensively sound at all. He worries me. Particularly worries me.
What do you make of this comment then, Henry? What are your thoughts on it? Because I think it's a very good point. I think he'd probably be at this point be better utilised as a backup left winger.
Yeah, perhaps. I think you might be right in saying that. It's a bit like the Diego Dallo thing again, really, isn't it? We thought we'd signed a great right back, and then he ended up being probably at one point the best right winger at the club for a little month or so. And obviously they both come from the Portuguese league, so perhaps a bit of a lazy comparison. But yeah, Telles, I don't know. He's just disappointed me in general. I've got to be honest. We got this player from Porto, and we've seen all the goal contributions and sort of the the set pieces, obviously taking penalties for them and being this all round sort of talisman for Porto. It's been nothing like that for United. He just seems like a random left back who's come from abroad and been thrown into a top side. He's not showing me anything of good quality. I've got to be honest. Apart from obviously, we've seen the odd delivery here and there when he first played against PSG in the away game in match day 1 in the Champions League. I thought he played well in that game, and I think we got a little bit excited then. And I thought obviously, last night he whipped in the corner at the wire, obviously steered home with his head. But apart from that, he's just been wildly disappointing for me, to be honest. I think Luke Shaw's form has been fantastic. Perhaps a credit to the management for bringing in a backup left back in getting the best out of Luke Shaw, who's been really good. But yeah, to answer the question whether his defence will be sound enough, I'm really not sure. I don't know what to make of Tellers. I've got to be honest. I struggle to make a strong judgment on him, other than I think he's been pretty disappointing.
James, with that, your mic's muted, by the way, James. With that image, can you just you got your mouse, yeah? Can you just put it on? Can you just put it on Pogba there? Because I can't understand his positioning here. Okay, so I understand he's got one eye on the midfielder at the edge of the box. Okay, he doesn't want to allow that pass there. As a player from that position, there is only one thing in Oliver Burke's mind, and that is to shoot. He shouldn't be in that position. He should be further across. Tuanzebe should be further forward. Alex Telles should be tucked slightly in. Matic yesterday, I can't stress this enough. Before that ball came in, he kind of jogged to the player to just kind of hang a leg and allow him to play that pass inside in the first place. Matic, again, shouldn't be there. Should be further in. As a defence, if you're defending a situation in your own box, you've got to be compact. That's the first thing a manager will say. Compact, tight, don't allow the spaces. There are 6 players around Oliver Burke there. Not one of them is within 2 meters of him. Not one. How on earth is that allowed by the manager? And this isn't down to defensive or lack of running or anything. That's positional again. It's a lack of attention. It's like we switch off in the key moments. We're jogging out to players, but if you have a kind of solid defensive line, you don't have to sprint out to players. You can be compact in a tight shape, but there is like 5 or 6 gaps alone. Oliver Burke in our box can play. I'm going to pick out 4 passes. He can pick out 4 passes and also shoot. How is there space to do that in our own 18-yard box? He can pick out the centre mid at the edge of the box. He can turn, pick out Basham. He can pick out the right wing back if he really wants to. He's got options. It's not as though he's just able to fire a shot off. He's got options in our own box. That is a defensive shambles. I'm sorry. I'm not going to solely blame the players for this, because the players aren't taught to do that. But it's just so, honestly, it's baffling. It's baffling.
I think you say Pogba's in the wrong position, and I've got to disagree with that. I think Tuanzebe positionally maybe could come across, but he's then blocking the line of the goalkeeper. But I do think it all comes from Martial not tracking. Because if Martial tracks back successfully, he's got the man that Matic is on. Tellez will obviously be marking the man that he's stood near. And then Matic is able to pick up this guy in the middle who takes the shot. I think positionally that's how it should have worked. That's how it would have worked if we had a left winger who was happy to track back. I think it all stems from that.
There is no way in hell Eric Bailly or Victor Lindelof let that shot get away without throwing their body in front of it. Axel Tuanzebe did what any average defender that can't be arsed does, and he hangs a leg at the shot. he hangs a leg and he sort of turns his back. If you turn your back as a centre half and I'm the manager, I'm hooking you straight away. I'm pulling you off the pitch. Especially for Manchester United, that's a mess. The same goes for Alex Telles. Hangs a leg. You shouldn't do that. And I know we can talk about Martial not tracking and whatever. Sometimes players don't get back and track. Okay, it happens with other teams as well. But it's the reaction from that. So it's the reaction from the other players. They'll notice straight away. They'll notice we're in a tough position here. Solid defensively. Don't let the shot get off. I know, again, I agree with John with the last comment. Fair play to Bruno for tracking that far, because a lot of other attacking midfielders wouldn't have tracked. So fair play to him for coming all the way back. He seemed to be the only one yesterday that was actually trying to make the runs and attack the space. But defensively, I know we'll blame Martial and Martial this or Rashford that or whatever, but that defensively is an absolute mess. And if we do anything like that against Arsenal, we will get ripped to shreds. So it's got to be a reaction at the weekend.
Yeah, well, that just brings us on to the end of this show. You know, I'll come to you, Henry. Does this result sort of get put in the back of everyone's minds if we get a good response from Arsenal? You know, if we go to the Emirates and beat Arsenal, do we suddenly forget about this result?
Yeah, I'd probably say so. I mean, it would depend on how we beat Arsenal. I mean, if we go and properly react and sort of absolutely batter Arsenal, I mean, I think it'll be in the back of everyone's mind. And I think it might have, in that sense, if we did go and batter, it might have sort of served a bit of a purpose in a way. I know a loss, dropping, a possible 3 points against bottom of the league is never good. If we do see a good reaction, we can go on a bit of a run again now, then I think, it served its purpose, this loss, and done what it needed to do in waking the players up a bit. Because we didn't deserve to win last night at all. And I think the players will know that. I hope they will know that going into the game at the weekend. But, it all depends on that reaction. I mean, if we draw against Arsenal, I think even if we draw, this result will still be very much in the forefront of people's thinking. And hopefully, I've said it throughout this, it all depends on the reaction now. I think, we can sit and dwell on this loss sort of all we want. It just depends on if the players dwell on it or not. And we'll have to see at the weekend if that happens. And if we don't, I think then this, in a way, has maybe done a bit of good.
Yeah, let's hope so. Well, Hennes, just to round us off, what needs to change in order to get a win at Arsenal?
To be honest, we need some changes in the side. It's quite clear that we need McTominay and Fred back in there. Bruno needs to perform at a higher level. Shaw will be back in the side. I'm sure Lindelof probably will be as well. So those are the personnel changes you want. But at the same time, we need a performance. We need a better performance than we've seen yesterday. I'm more confident about this Arsenal game because I expect a reaction now. I don't expect us to go out there and have a shocking performance and look off it, look average and get rolled over. I expect a performance where we're going to go out there and really attack Arsenal and hopefully show them what for and show everyone the reason why we're up at the near the top of the table. So I expect a reaction. I don't expect a similar performance to Sheffield United. And if that does happen, we've got to ask even more questions.
Yeah, definitely. But, to round us off then, we are still second in the league. That's probably higher than we ever thought we would be this season. So you just got to look on the bright side. But, on that note, thanks to everyone for watching and for contributing. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe. Both Henrys, thank you for joining me. You've been brilliant as ever. And we'll see you next time.
Manchester United are the champions of Europe